Hello, FanFest. I'll give you a few seconds to sit down. Who was at the pub crawl last night? Special shout out to Capital Fusion, who I was hanging out with. See you. And Steve Ronikin, are you here? He's maybe too drunk. No. And the Abyss Watchers, are you here? No. I see you. All right, let's get this started. So something I heard yesterday was, what's the living universe? And it's basically everything that players experience after the academy. The academy is a runway into the living universe, and we're constantly improving that. But at the same time, we have to release stuff into the wild, and it might be easy to think about high sec, low sec, null sec. It's not that simple. You're not a new player in high sec, so I'm going to quickly go through this because I assume people have seen the keynote. So if you're not, you'll have to watch that and then watch me tomorrow. So heraldry is a way for both players and corporations to display what they want others to see. This is something we talked about, promised, seen concept before, and we're all excited about it, super excited about it. And it opens up customization like beyond belief. And a fundamental drive for that is the fact that it has to be earned. Like, it can't be bought, it's not Plex, it's not ISK, you have to earn it. And it either takes time or teamwork for collective goals, or you can't buy kill marks, that's for sure. And no shortcuts. So if you wear it, you've earned it. And quickly through this, Intobus credits will be generated through activity. Can't be traded. You can just think of it as loyalty points for now. It's very similar. Or frequent flyer miles. It's a very similar topic. But you'll earn it, and you'll earn Intobus credits for your corporation if you belong to it at probably a 1-to-1 ratio. The game design is in its final stages, but that's probably the way it is. So every corporation will gain from active members doing stuff, building everything together, collective goals. The fitting window, obviously something we need to tackle to support all these new cosmetics. But this is, I think I want to try to keep the way it is for now. So it's user-friendly, people know how it is. We don't want to create another user experience. But earning them, let's talk a little bit about that. It starts by doing activities in game. And we want more players doing stuff in space, and that's good for everyone. These challenges could, like earning at Intobus could be doing literally anything. Events, challenges, finishing the career program, that's something that they talked about yesterday, CCP Nomad. And to reward good students for finishing their school, and the corporations that actually recruit them while the career program is going on or afterwards. But do activities, be Omega. That will just mean that you get more credits. If you join a corporation, you contribute to the organization, and then you buy your own stuff for your own chips, for your own Intobus credits. And the corporation gets credits by having members who do stuff. If you retain them, recruit them, train them, and retain them, they'll continue generating credits for you for those special cosmetics that you want, or heraldry. And if members convert to Omega, good for them, good for you. You spend your Intobus credits on Alliance logos for your structures or things like that. And then ultimately, if you want to help them, you can always buy Plex or Omega them for Plex that they earned together. So this is the core loop. We also want to open up manual donations to corporation, not between characters, only up. We also know that some corporations or alliances have multiple corporations under their umbrella, but they still want to contribute to the alliance. So that would be possible. I'm sorry. And then corporation tax, and I'll talk about that. But Omega is the key. It simply multiplies the Interplus credits as you get. And the first activity that will grant Interplus credits is made for players by players. And I want to explain that. This is something that I'm very passionate about because it addresses the fundamental problem and unique issue of EVE Online. It is a game, it is, with rewards. And being the most sophisticated player-run economy that exists, we have three things to keep in mind. We need to give out items as rewards. It's simply what we need. We want to respect the work of player manufacturers, and we don't want to disrupt the economy with unnecessary ISK faucets. But we can't simply buy items from the CCP player market because that would set an artificial price or floor on for the market. So the first iteration would be to create NPC donation missions where the reward is Interplus credits. Now it's a choice for someone to either manufacture the items or simply buy the item from the market and donate them. Either way, the manufacturer is getting paid for their work. There's no pay to win here because the Interplus credits are heraldry, and heraldry is cosmetic only, so that's never going to work. And new players really have to learn so much. And what we're doing as veterans is we're helping them, we're supplying convenience to them. They don't have to go through all of the learning before they go into space, get blown up, repeat, rinse and repeat. So we believe they will be more motivated to stick around if they have access to ships and we're not spawning them for them. So you're helping them. While this has been, when this has been thoroughly tested, there's no reason to not expand this to a much more complete suite. A fully integrated system with all rewards, even skill points from the player market. And giving out more ships to new players throughout the academy. I talked about stronger organizations yesterday, and I'm going to talk about organizational income. If Interplus credits are LP, and we can tax LP, that means we unlock organizational income for corporations, because then we can tax a new, or they can tax this new activity without relying on donations from those players. That's a person that does accounting for their alliance and corporation. So the reason why it's so easy to do bounties is because it's easy to tax. That's very clear. That also means that there's a unnecessary friction or kind of, I would say, pressure on corporation members to do bounties. We don't want everyone to be doing bounties and ratting for the corporation. If they could just do what they want to do and contribute automatically to the corporation, that is win-win for everyone. So we want organizations to have money because they fuel the wars, they fuel destruction, and through SRP and pay SOF bills. So that's good for the business, good for the game, and it's good for everyone. And there's another tax that we could introduce. I'll say again, CCP is not introducing this. It's a organizational tax on their members, optional. So if you want to tax, also we could introduce a VAT tax. So basically try to set a tax on anything that's sold on the market. So the corporation would simply take a tiny percentage of all, so whether you mine and sell the ore, whether you take the ore and then manufacture and sell it then, or take the LP items and sell them, basically some part of that wealth stream would be going to the corporation. Very easy, not that hard. And that's something, that's just a tool for you directors out there. And really, it's for everyone in the corporation. It's not unfair, because otherwise you're just going to get a bill every month to say, like, you own X million because I think you were looting something in wormholes. This also helps with that management. So we want to strengthen public access to data. Currently we only have the MER, which is kind of, you have to upload the CSVs, you have to do some stuff you really want to dig into it. And if you're not a web developer, I am not, for example, and I have a hard time understanding the API, and I don't have time for that. So what we're trying to do here is to give a structured data warehouse to players at their fingertips through Excel. So you basically open Excel, get the Eve plugin from the official store, and then you have access to the same data as everyone else has. So very easy access. This will be fantastic for small and mid corporations as well. Then, one thing, we want to keep our new players, and I want to talk about high-sec PvP. So, griefing is something that I'm concerned about. So, we've recently spent considerable time on and resources on studying high-sec PvP. And the results are very clear. There are two main patterns of gameplay. So, griefing. It's blowing up new players in new player ships with nothing in them. The attacker gains nothing, and the victim has no means to response. He doesn't expect to be killed, does not understand why he was killed, and from then on, bootstrapping back into that ship will be hard and difficult for them because they don't really know what to do next. And the verdict for us is, this doesn't fit our cruel but fair pillar. It's simply cruel. There's nothing there. Ganking. Blowing veterans, finishing blinged Abyss, Gilas, Orca miners, Marauders doing missions. This is a massive reward for players for a good kill. And the victim can choose their risk. There's plenty of ways to reduce it, but you can't eliminate it because that's not how EVE works. And they know how to bootstrap back. If they lost something, they'll figure it out. So the verdict on that is cruel but fair. And our efforts will almost exclusively focus on reducing the griefing aspect, not the ganking aspect. So, gankers, you're safe. So the living universe today, mining volume is back to historical norms. Larrikin showed us yesterday. Wealth distribution and duration is also more diverse. New players are doing gas mining. There's all kinds of things that weren't there before. PI is more valuable. A lot of things are more valuable. Ratting isn't, but that was also part of the design. It doesn't mean we're stopped improving ratting, but it's not the only way to make money, especially if we introduce those organizational income pillars. Upcoming structure changes will make conflict much better, and we're seeing that in a week from now, or literally on next deployment. Dreadnoughts are a critical part of the puzzle. They're a logical first capital and aspirational goal. They allow punching up, and now at a much better rate, to supers and titans. They work at home defense, and they work at hunting. They can do PvE with crabs, and the new experimental capital ratting sites that we have been doing. The White Anchorage was the first one in December, hoping to see more very soon. And the strategic commitment is this, and I want to explain the faction warfare aspect of it. We're looking to create a more dynamic living universe. Vibrant Metropolis is one of the pillars. Faction warfare is a setting. It does not mean it's only faction warfare. It means that we want to introduce change through factions and the empires in that area of space. Structures and sovereignty are still the key elements of going forward, and arcs are simply a vehicle to deliver content through story and player activity. And we're looking at something, they'll talk about it later, in a few minutes. Content in this case ranges from new ships, sites, and rewards. Of course, we're not doing new ships, we're not doing sites. Everything is coming, but in a narrative flavor, and sometimes mystery is something that people look forward to, and we want to keep it under wraps, but obviously there's content coming. And it's not just content for faction warfare. It seems it's going into it spills into the living universe, and not just for low-sec, and not just for current faction warfare players. And now, here is CCP Aurora to actually shed a lot more light on that. She asked for 2 hours. She only has half.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to see that most of you have woken up today. It was a struggle, I will admit. I was a bit nervous yesterday. Thank you for sticking with me. You guys are terrifying. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about faction warfare. Yesterday, I talked about it in brief. I introduced a dynamic frontline system. And today, what I want to do is I want to dig in a little bit more into exactly what that means, what we're looking at. So the slides will have words today. None of my slides had words yesterday, which also means I have no notes. So we'll be looking at this together. As I said, faction warfare is our primary focus. That doesn't mean that content won't be introduced to other areas of the game, but what it does mean is that faction warfare is the vehicle through which it might be introduced. For example, there could be changes to nullsec, which would be introduced through a faction warfare storyline, but then spill out into the rest of the universe. And it could touch all sorts of things, whether that's structures, because we're not done with them yet. We still have a lot of thoughts on structures, and they're super important. It could be territory control, how you control space, whether it's inside faction warfare, whether it's sovereignty, or maybe even new systems elsewhere, claiming a wormhole system, claiming a high-sec system. And of course, ship and fleet balance. I'll never be done with that. I buffed the Proteus recently. Proteus is a great ship. Speed subsystem, maybe one day. And we'll be looking at all of the content in various areas of the game, especially faction warfare because it needs it the most. But this could be content in other places as well. So we're looking at updating faction warfare complexes, even just little tweaks, quality of life things that really need to be done, and I'll go into that a little bit more later. New battlefield sites make it really feel like a war. Right now, faction warfare feels like you're scavenging, like it's a post-apocalyptic society, and you're like, there's like 4 others out here and they might hurt me, but maybe you'll run into them, maybe you won't. It doesn't feel like a war, and we want to give you that war feeling. And as I said, it's just kind of a vehicle to introduce cool new changes overall. So I want to talk a little bit about what I'm thinking when I'm looking at faction warfare. What sort of things do I have in mind? Top of the list is we want to make meaningful geography. The geography in EVE, as some people have kind of noticed over the years, the value of that has decreased. So one system is not very different from the next system. One nullsec system that you own is very similar to any other nullsec system, and so it makes choosing space or fighting for a particular region that you care about a little too simple. You want each system to have a unique value, a strategic meaning. And so we're looking at that in faction warfare space as well. And we want people to be loyal to their factions. Right now in faction warfare, there is a tier system that results in some rather unpleasant gameplay where large groups will just kind of rapidly switch back and forth, and they washboard the faction warfare space back and forth. And we don't want that. We want you to commit to a faction. We want you to have clear goals. We want you to succeed. And of course, we need to give faction warfare space some love. It really needs it. It's been a long time. I'll go into that a little bit more. That said, this isn't a total rework. The core of faction warfare is actually pretty cool. The fact that there's so many faction warfare players here in this audience is a testament to that. I mean, you guys wouldn't still be there if there wasn't something involved that was really valuable, and we don't want to discard that. What we want to do is we want to augment it. We want to add new things on top of it, bring new people into the space, and just make it more vibrant and more healthy. And of course, we want your choice to matter. Like, this is the Living Universe team. It's not the Stagnant Universe team. That would be a really weird team name for us to have. So when you achieve a victory, it should actually mean something, and there should be a clear victory. Once again, it's not just an endless tug of war side to side across the battlefield, but it's a clear objective, a clear win, a clear loss, and a clear, nice payout of rewards once you get through it. And we want to bring new people into the battlefield. We want players in space, and we want them to have fun. So as we're looking at all of these things that we want to do, we need to keep in mind also the things that we need to consider. Risk-reward, effort balance. A lot of people talk about risk-reward, but we look at it also in terms of the effort pillar, which is often forgotten. How much time did you spend setting up, rolling holes, getting everybody together, picking your alliance, just to run like a couple C5 sites before somebody got bored and left? There's a reason that content is a little bit more valuable, because there's a large effort component, even if your holes are rolled and the risk is not that high. I know, because I do that, and it's great money. We want to design for player interaction. And this is something that I'm really passionate about. We want to bring people together. So that's not just people in a system. I also care about all of the places in the system that people could be. So for example, if you are in an LSEC system, and there are 32 anomalies, 16 structures, 8 planets, 64 moons, the list can get really big. And so even though you're in a system with 100 people, it can feel quiet. You're not getting those spontaneous interactions that really drive EVE. And that's something that I think we should always keep in mind. How can we bring people into close proximity so that they can have meaningful and interesting interactions with each other, whether that's making friends or shooting? And of course, we want to consider different play styles. As you all know, it's really hard for us to get like very clear feedback, like this is exactly what's wrong. Well, I take that back. We get a lot of feedback that's like, this is exactly what's wrong with EVE. And then someone else over is like, no, it's not. And so we need to consider all of these different groups that play the game and how our changes might impact them. So I had introduced an allegiance and loyalty system yesterday, which is a way for us to kind of have a more binary declaration of allegiance. Right now in faction warfare, that is a militia system. If you join an alliance that's in a militia, then you get entered into their militia. But we want to clean that up. That's a really strange choice to have to make. There's a lot of players elsewhere in the game that are part of alliances that would like to participate in faction warfare that cannot today. Oof, I did ask for 2 hours. That would have been much better. Yeah, I'm moving along. All right, so we want NPC factions to set their own goals. So, for example, capture this system so that we can do this thing. And of course, we want you to be rewarded for them. I'll go into rewards a little bit more later, but we're effectively looking at reworking the tier system and introducing something new in its place that has better aligned incentives with what players actually want to do. All right, so I had talked about dynamic frontlines yesterday. As I said, there are 180 systems in faction warfare space, and they're all about the same. And so that's something that we want to take a look at. We want to make geography more meaningful. And this can be done in both dynamic and static ways. Like the mountain range is a mountain range. It's a difficult thing to cross. But as like an army invading it could technically seize control of that territory. So that would be a dynamic versus the static mountain range. And a little bit of both makes for a really colorful space. So the way that we're looking at these frontline systems right now, you can see like the red is controlled by one team, and then the blue is controlled by another. We're looking at a really simple definition at the moment, which is just if a system borders another system, then it is declared a frontline system. And then if a system borders a frontline, but not an enemy system, then it would be declared a command operations system. Command operations would kind of have its own tactical value. That's exactly what that is yet. It's still being decided. But in this case, one of the things that we're thinking is, what if you cut off a system from its support? It no longer has a command operations system behind it to help feed those front lines. That system might be easier to capture. And so there could be new emergent gameplay created through the system, special strategies like, we're having trouble taking this, but if we cut it off, that would be really cool. We can take that system. So what would the front lines look today? Some of you will recognize Dotlan. It is a well-known player tool. I just did a really bad job in Paint, do forgive me. But what you see here in red, those are what would be the frontline systems. If we just turned on this magically today, that would be where you would find the action, That's where you would find like the special news sites that we're looking to add to them. And you know if you're entering faction warfare, you want to push those systems because they'll be more effective and you'll get better rewards. And then the green would be the command operations systems. At the moment, in the Ammar Minmatar faction warfare zone, instead of having, I don't remember what the total is, whatever those numbers add up to, we would have 23 frontline systems, 14 second line, which is an old term that we were using before. That would be 14 command operations systems, and 33 systems which are considered rear guard. So those rear guard systems, we're kind of looking at those as they're entrenched. They're difficult to capture, and you're going to take, it's not very rewarding to do so. It's going to be a long slog. Like that's not exactly where you want to put your tactical effort, but I also don't want to entirely close the door. So maybe it would be rewardless, but you could attack a rear guard system in order to gain a future strategic advantage if you thought that that would be beneficial. And then we were going to look to layer an objective system over the top of it. So each faction would kind of declare, like, we need you to take this system. If you take this system, we'll achieve our goals. And it'll add additional vibrance to this new frontline terrain of faction warfare space. All of a sudden, there are choke systems where there weren't previously. And so this is sort of just talking about the extra gameplay that we were thinking about adding to the faction warfare space. So we want to bring more people in. The existing faction warfare crowd is awesome, but you guys need some more friends. And so we want to expand the gameplay variety in here as well. So an objective might not be simply capture this system. It could also be capture this system, build this station, and hold it while we accomplish something. And then that could help us bring in new gameplay, such as like warzone salvaging. There could be logistics operations where you're having to like bring supplies to the front lines in order to support them. It adds a whole lot of new vibrancy on top of the existing gameplay, where you're still trying to fight and capture and control systems. Exactly what this will be, still yet to be determined. We're very much in the exploration phase at the moment, so I've had a lot of conversations. I'm about to get a whole lot more at that Faction Warfare Roundtable, I'm sure. But if you have ideas, things that you think would work well, things that you have concerns about, now's the time to ask them so that I can make sure that those thoughts make it into our designs, which will be happening next week. And of course, I said that faction warfare needs some love. So there are a number of issues. Upwell structures in faction warfare space are not great because the meaningful control of that territory was somewhat undermined by allowing enemy militias to simply still have perfectly fine tether and docking access in space that you control. So that's absolutely something we want to take a look at. We want to kind of look at complexes. So the current complex design is rather simple. Like, can we make it so that pirate ships can't enter novice complexes, for example? That would be really satisfying to those people who can't afford pirate ships, like myself most of the time. And can we kind of shift things so that there's extra value for Navy ships? Value for Navy ships is a really big thing. Navy ships are really cool, but sometimes they get overshadowed. Like, how can we make those brighter? Apparently there's a mouse. We also want to take a look at faction warfare missions. Faction warfare missions currently do not fit well into the ecosystem of faction warfare. They're kind of a thing that non-faction warfare pilots do to extract money at the expense of reducing the value of the LP earned by people actually doing the fighting and the system control. I'm not going to eliminate them entirely, but just know that it's something that we're keeping an eye on. In particular, the tags are on my mind. I want to make sure that you can earn your faction warfare rewards. You can actually access the LP store without having to go grind for those tags in faction warfare missions if that's not exactly your thing. And we want to take a look at the sites themselves. So at the moment, every site is the same in terms of like how valuable it is strategically, like how many victory points did you earn, whether you're running a novice in a T1 frigate or an open in a battleship. So adding a little bit more value to those larger sites just makes sense. It rewards people for putting those larger ships on field. Speaking of rewards, we're looking at reworking them. So when I say that we're looking to remove the tier system, what I mean is we're kind of getting rid of it. So no longer will like the winning faction get rewards for just having more systems, but instead they'll get rewards for completing objectives successfully. So if you assist in completing an objective, you'll be entered into a pool of communal rewards. And then once that, whoops, sorry, microphone's there. Once that objective succeeds or fails, you'll be paid out accordingly. At the same time, we want to reward loyalty. So win or lose, if you're sticking with the same faction, there's a track that you're working along, where as you earn rewards, you earn your loyalty, you get cool stuff for it. And taking a little bit of a turn, we're also looking at structures. As we said, we're not done. Structure still needs some love. I think a lot of people will agree with the top point. We want to ensure attacker commitment. So at the moment, someone can show up and just shoot your citadel. And if they don't return, you still have to form a defense fleet. You don't know if they're coming back. And that can be a really unsatisfying thing. Nobody likes made you form. So imagine for an example where, like, in order to attack that structure, the attacker has to come in and drop like a siege structure. And that siege structure powers up and it like breaks through the structure, which then allows them to bash it, but they can't remove it from the field, and that thing's a little bit pricey. If they don't show up again, the defenders will simply destroy it, take a valuable bit of loot out of it, and they'll get paid for having to show up and defend their structure. And the attackers will have lost whatever that was. Whatever system we put in place here, we want to ensure that people are committed when they're actually a threat to the places that you live. There's also some lessons that we learned from World War B. 2, 3? Never mind. The Casino War, or whatever you want to call it. So at the moment, if you go and you're fighting in nullsec warfare and you attack a flex structure, the defender just drops another one almost immediately. And it makes it feel really pointless. So we're looking at, like, can we add a tactical window? If you take out their Ansible Gate, or if you take out their Sino beacon, can you open a window where it takes time for them to put it back so that you can actually make use of that, rather than just taking a small cash penalty for making them replace the flex structure? We're also looking at capital ship retether time. I know this one's a little spicy, but at the moment there's a difference between a sub-capital ship, which has a 60-second tether time with a combat timer. When it lands on a structure, that 60-second timer is really a lot. If we look at this in terms of a HP to second metric, capital ships are totally in a different league. And so we want to make sure that that balance is reasonable. So fighting on an undock can still be a thing. Like, you can still put your capitals on your undock and fight. But once you untether, there's actually meaningful risk similar to that subcap risk that already exists. In general, improved gameplay and counterplay around Ansible Gates. They're a super useful nullsec tool, but at the same time, they're also really frustrating for anyone who wants to mess with you. So the ability, there's kind of 2 points here. One is projection, which is a thing that I'm not exactly taking a look at, and the other is counterplay. If you see someone in a system and they're on an Ansible Gate, you don't really want to engage because they can instantly disappear at any time. So you know that it's not going to be successful for you, and so why would you take that risk? And of course, continue looking at POSes. So that could be, POSes currently have 2 uses. One is like capital storage, and one as day tripping into a wormhole with a cheap, easy, rapid to set up structure. So we're taking a look at that. And there's other changes we want to make as well. So as I said, these might get introduced through faction warfare. But there's a lot that can be done to make EVE more fun, more well-rounded. Whether that's new toys and tools. For example, a damage module that applies a damage over time effect. Something brand new. You can hit someone with it if you get close enough and run away, and it continues to tick down. Who knows? Purely an example. Please don't get too taken with that. And of course, balance. I want to pull up the weaker ships, and I want to, like the Proteus I did recently, and I want to reshape the dominant ones. So looking at hacks, for example, I'm sure there's a lot of opinions on heavy assault cruisers. I don't want to destroy them. As much as some people would really love us to nerf this thing into the ground, every ship should have its role. And of course, we're still looking at the tough issues. I don't have answers for you today on what Rattati talked about in terms of high-set ganking, but it is something on our radar. Quality of life updates. Who here would like to be able to instantly clone jump without a cooldown in an NPC station? Maybe. I can't take it away now. Yeah. More readable maps. The in-game map is great, but there's a reason that I used .lan on a previous slide. And of course, we're looking at capital ships. We want to ensure that the capital ecosystem is healthy. Every ship has its role. For example, dreadnoughts can maybe have a role in structure fights again. And every ship has its counters. So currently, it's not terrible, but there are things that could be improved. Carriers are in a strange place right now where they're both overpowered and have no purpose, which is a very strange place for any ship to be in. And of course, we're looking at Navy ships. It's faction warfare time. So we want to make sure those Navy ships are valuable. We want to make sure that your LP rewards are worth it to you. And so we're going to take a look at buffing the Navy ships. Armageddon Navy is terrible. That one's on my list. And even more wild things. Can we add value to them in other ways, such as adding faction bonuses, special bonuses within faction warfare space? That would be, of course, well-balanced for the game around them. And with that, I would like to hand it back over to, actually, nope, Snorri's not taking it, CCP Emerald, who is our new brand manager.
Hey, everybody. So great to see you all here after last night. Hi, everybody. I'm CCP Emerald. I'm new to FanFest. It's already been such an inspiring week, though. I've really enjoyed getting to know you. I've met some of you this week, and I look forward to meeting more of you tonight, especially with the party at the top of the world. Who's excited? All right, come on. All right. So now that you've seen some of the incredible plans coming from Living Universe, I wanted to take a minute to walk you through how we're evolving from quadrants. But let's take a quick look back first. For many years, expansions were released in EVE. I'm sure you remember the days where you waited in anticipation for the next big expansion, all so you could finally get all of your cool new space toys to play with. So a few years ago, we decided it was time to evolve from expansion so that we could be a little bit more flexible with our releases, keeping New Eden alive and dynamic. So EVE evolved into quadrants, and that was a 2-year era. Quadrants allowed us to be dynamic with our releases, ensuring that there was always a steady stream of fresh new content in EVE. And within quadrants, we told longer-term stories, as with the Triglavian Invasion trilogy. And our goal is to keep the dexterity that we've had with quadrants, but we want to build on that foundation, telling even deeper and more immersive stories, but more importantly, setting the stage for you to play a part in shaping the future of New Eden. So we're planning to roll out something new, and we're calling it ARCs. Each arc tells a cohesive story in which you play an important role. It'll feature a steady stream of narrative-driven events and content that lead you to a climactic moment revealing a significant change in New Eden. Just now, Aurora walked you through how this might play a part in factional warfare. And in just a little bit, CCP Loki is going to talk about the narrative behind this. But in addition to introducing narrative arcs to Eve, we're also going to be moving towards reintroducing expansions. But they're going to look a little bit different than the expansions you're used to. Expansions will become the major content releases in Eve. They will contain big content moments in arcs, new features, significant tech evolutions, art and audio enhancement, and so much more. And a lot of what you guys saw yesterday in the plans. But a key difference here, and with this new era of expansions, you're still going to be able to expect a steady stream of releases, seasonal events, challenges, story progression moments, and balance changes in between. So it's not going to be nothing happening in between. There's going to be plenty for you guys to do. And this will keep New Eden active and vibrant with regular seasonal events, regular challenges, and new storylines told through arcs. But there's going to be something big to look forward to, making this really the best of both worlds. You can expect the first expansion moment to come in Q4 2022, and we're really excited to reveal more to you then. But now, for the fun part, I'm going to hand the mic over to CCP Loki, who's going to be doing a deeper dive on some of the narrative development plans for this, and he's going to give you a peek at where we're headed with arcs. But let's hope he doesn't get interrupted this time.
Good morning. Why are we here? True, falls under we want to be entertained. When playing a game, we want to be challenged and want to be immersed in that game. And everyone here at CCP should be aimed to enforce those feelings, including when including features into New Eden. When you play Eve, you should feel like you're stepping into this universe, this place called New Eden. A living universe is something that evolves and changes over time and is constantly affected by events that take place inside it. Now, many of New Eden's most spectacular events were created by you, the Capsuleers. Over a period spanning almost 20 years now, heists and other dirty deeds have been committed. Nullsec feuds and wars lasting decades have been fought. And player empires have risen and faded away. I find it fascinating that all these events become part of New Eden history and lore. And with the passage of time, they somehow become more mythical or legendary even. Books have even been written about it. And many of you in here can actually say, wait for it.
I was there. I'm telling you, I was there.
I was there when we filmed it. The goal of narrative-driven design is to create more moments for you in the future that you can say, I was there. The feeling of taking a part in a story unfolding on a grand scale that leaves a permanent mark on New Eden. Now, here we can talk, for example, about POSWEN. A POSWEN was an event where you could actually affect the outcome, and it leaves like a very big permanent mark on New Eden. It's not completely scripted, it's up to you. It was up to you how it panned out. So you will be able to take an active part in determining the outcome of a lot of these events. This is how new features will be introduced, and this is how you get a sense of belonging to your faction. This will be providing a way for you to interact with the lore and co-create it with us. Now, how are we going to do this? In many ways, we have done all kinds of these kinds of things before. For example, in the lead up to Abyssal Dead Space and the Traglavian invasion, and taking the lessons learned from these events and experiments, we're going to do this on a much larger scale. This is why we're holding back a lot of content during this keynote. We want all the toys, whether it's ships, structures, whatever it is, to feed out throughout the Ark into your hands. Because if we would tell you what is coming in the next months, it would take away all element of mystery and discovery. It would be like George Lucas in 1980 saying, yeah, you liked Star Wars, I'm going to make a new movie, I'm going to call it The Empire Strikes Back, and at the end of it, you're going to find out that Darth Vader is Luke's father. Oh, shit, sorry. Oh, I'll just quit now, sorry. Yeah. But you can say, you know, one of the lessons we learned is that each arc will have a very clear beginning, climax, and a conclusion. To make this clearer, we can look at some previous and hypothetical examples. And again, I want to emphasize, even though I'm using these as an example, we are not going to do the same thing exactly again. Each arc will feel unique, have its own storyline, own twists and plots, its own custom events and all that shenanigans. So each arc has its own story. Now, in narrative-driven design, in the simplest form, we are basically introducing a feature through narration. I mean, while this still beats patch notes, it still lacks a very fundamental element we want to lean more into, and that's engagement with you. So, again, to use previous examples, in the beginning of each arc, and I want to emphasize, the first arc has already started. There are clues out there, so keep your eyes and ears open. But each arc starts with you just thinking, what the hell is going on? Over some period, events takes place and clues are dropped, and you have to accomplish tasks. And again, during this period, which we are in now, there is complete radio silence from us. We're not telling you that we're going to have a super Star Destroyer in The Empire Strikes Back. There is complete silence. You need to figure this out yourselves. Later on in the discovery phase, and slowly as more objectives are achieved and more clues are revealed, your theories will sort of become closer to reality, what we're actually going to do. And for those of you who are not engaging directly and participating in the events, you will still get a feedback on what's going on. Eventually, the news or the scope might clear things up or not. In this case, we actually got a Nobel Prize winner to explain how Abyssal Dead Space works. But at the end of this period, CCP will break its radio silence. We will discuss the feature. We will have the usual conversation with you, as we always do, about, you know, it will come out on CC, balance issues, all those things. It's basically the first phase, which we are in now, where we have a mystery phase, where we're not telling you anything. You need to figure this out. The last stage is sort of race to completion. At this point in the arc, it has become clear what is going on and what are your faction objectives. In many cases, it would be a race between the factions to get things done. Now, here the goals will be extremely clear. There is no mystery. The Empire will directly tell you what they want to do. Because it's an extremely important lesson from the past that when running these things, for example, I'm just going to say it out loud, like in POSWEN, right from the beginning, you should have known what's at stake when fighting for the systems and what would the end result would be. We have picked up we learned sometimes. And during this phase, things might start to appear in the game. You might see like half-built structure, you might see the empires on the move and try to get there to do their bidding. And it's now up to you to achieve your faction goals and, for example, acquire a new technology for your faction. This will utilize the frontline system, the allegiance system, all the things we talked about. The narrative is just tying the whole thing together and sort of just make it have a purpose. So previously, again, we released these guys, and they just came out. Now, if we were doing this, you would actually have to fight for the Gallente or the Caldari, perhaps even do different things, maybe fight against each other to acquire the technology first. And as CCP Ora mentioned, you will have to make a long-term decision when it comes to pledging your allegiance with a faction. Because we want this also to spill out of factional warfare. So for example, like earlier when we were talking about the ships, if you participate in the event itself, you get extra rewards for doing that for your faction. But the remainder, all the other capsuleers who are in your faction, they won't have the ship until the faction has completed the goal. And we're going to play on a lot more things than just giving things out to you. These might have like economy results. We're sort of experimenting with all kinds of effects that will have on the world. We really want the empires to come alive. And while we have like pretty cool backstories and lore, the empires have always felt a bit stagnant in the game. We have factional warfare, which has been sort of in its bubble on its own. We want to make it much bigger, and we want it to spill out into the whole game. You will feel like you belong to the empire. When your empire does well, you are doing well. When your empire is doing badly, you are doing badly, up to a point. And again, we will see more visible, NPCs will be more visible during events. Actually, in the game right now, you will see some of the things that are sort of starting to wind up. We sort of started today, this morning at downtime. Again, this is like the real world. Don't expect World War III. We are ramping slowly up. This is a journey, not a, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And we're going to use the NPCs a lot to tell the story. We're going to see them fight. We're just going to do all kinds of shenanigans as usual. Just on a much bigger scale. And onto the narrative. As you have noticed, we have started to tell more character-driven stories and show more of New Eden in our videos. Over the past year, the faction leaders have become more visible. And the faction culture and traits will also continue to be more seen and felt throughout videos and other media. We sort of want to, I assume most of you know who Soria Triglav is. What's his name? Get a free beer later. We want to make these characters iconic. We want them, to be the identity of your faction. And we'll continue to see more of ships and station interiors and surfaces and planet surfaces and so on. Now, are those things going to come into the game itself? No, probably not. But these places are a part of the EVE universe, and showing them goes a long way in creating a living, breathing universe. This is world building. This is immersion. And, hey, it's, a lot of it's just entertainment. I had some fun making this one. Fun fact, when the guys come running out, that's all me. It's me in a mocap suit in my house running into the kitchen. Yeah. I had my son as the director. So you will continue to see more of these things. And, we are sort of getting to a place where we can speed up the process and create a lot more of these, and we're getting better and better and better. And sorry about the animation sometimes. I'm getting there. And again, the first arc has started. The clues are already out there. So keep your eyes and ears open. Here we go.
Capsuleers attending a session of the Interstellar Anti-Smuggling and Counter-Piracy Conference at the JITA 4 TAC 4 Trade Hub were surprised when a Concord presentation on rising smuggler activity was apparently hijacked by the very same smugglers.
Platitudes, blandishments, lies. You of all people know that Concord and the Empires have no interests in common with you. They have done nothing for you. They shall do nothing for you. How long will you listen to their empty words? In recent days, as is their pitiful habit, Concord has made use of you to advance their own agenda. These free trade outposts you have so willingly cleared of my associates have been taken over by Concord's worst, the Saro. Perhaps you don't believe me? Check for yourself. I have broadcast the new signatures of those sites to all. Why should you not destroy the Saro bully boys? They have always sought to control you. Do their bidding no more. Open your eyes. Seize your destiny. And, if you would, join me, the Deathless.
Embarrassed by this intrusion, Concord officials have refused to comment on Saro activity at occupied smuggler outposts, other than to state that measures are simply being carried out to ensure the complete eradication of illegal smuggling activities. Any recent improvements in the strained diplomatic relationship between the Gallente Federation and the Caldari state have been overshadowed by claims that a Gallente diplomat was involved in a massive spy ring operating within the Caldari state. The Caldari State's chairman, Akimaka Saraki, delivered a fiery speech in a live broadcast from the Caldari Chief Executive Panel yesterday. The scheduled speech was reportedly originally aimed at promoting interstellar diplomacy due to the ongoing JITA 4 TAC 4 summit. However, with state corporations and citizens expressing outrage over the new allegations, the delivered speech leaned heavily into patriotic rhetoric and evoked previous hostilities with the Gallente state.
We remain Caldari, no matter the cost.
No direct response or comments have been made by the Gallente Federation so far, but Federation Navy and Customs Forces have been placed on heightened alert status. This is Alton Havery, reporting for The Scope.
There are at least 3 clues in that, so go look at it, screenshot it. I just want to recap everything we talked about for the Living Universe. We're looking at 3 pillars: organizational income, heraldry, made for players by players, cruel but fair. We're looking at fair access to data through spreadsheets, anti-cheat improvements, high-sec ganking, and griefing. And for Metropolis, we're looking at evolving meta and quality of life, as CCP Aurora went through. Dawn of the Dreadnoughts. That's my sentence. Don't take her. Don't blame her. Hangar immersion. I think it's incredibly important. Our emotional attachment is to our ships, and that is very clear. Structures and sovereignty. That is a key pillar for all of our attention to faction warfare. Looking at upload structures, for example, in faction warfare, is a way to start tackling these problems specifically area by area, security by security, issue by issue. High-value frontlines. I don't think that came clear enough through, is that if you have border states, you have people on both sides. The problem with high-value sites content is when it happens way beyond sovereignty, somewhere safe, we have lost the risk part of the reward. This creates a pinnacle conflict driver opportunity for us to put very valuable things on borders. All building on the faction warfare foundation without being only for faction warfare players. We're looking at Epic Era and ARCs coming this year, multi-account benefits, and Omega boosting Intibus credits to help with heraldry. So this is us, the Living Universe. Thank you for your attention and listening.